Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, I'm John, this is Many a True Nerd, and welcome to Fallout 4. It's actually here, and I have been fortunate enough to have the opportunity to play with it a little bit before general release. I've been kind of making a lot of notes while I've been doing so I wanted to make a quick updated character build guide, as well as a few interesting points I think are well worth discussing and thinking about when you're planning to build a character. So, first up, if you are getting a bit stressed, not sure what direction you want to take your character and you're really not sure even this close to launch, don't worry too much about it. Fallout 4 I think has been pretty well designed to allow you to dabble in multiple different playstyles. Like, the game is not going to stamp on your face if you don't kind of specialise super early in the game. If anything, I think kind of the game's gently encouraging you to kind of try multiple playstyles at once because... partly because ammo is pretty damn scarce, actually. It's way more scarce than it was in New Vegas. I'd say it's more scarce than it was in Fallout 3. So you can't really rely on like a single type of weapon that runs on a single type of ammo or anything. I'd say kind of you have to dabble between multiple different weapon types, at least while you're learning the game. But on the other hand, having had a chance to kind of really play with the game and have a look at the perk table and trying to figure out how things interact, I think actually when we start like playing this game on the highest difficulty settings and when we start kind of, when we start playing this game on the highest difficulty settings with difficult rule sets or whatever, specialization in Fallout 4 is going to be way more important than it was in Fallout 3. That's partly because back in Fallout 3, there weren't actually that many perks that gave you kind of damage multipliers, really. You know, there were a few, Superior Defender, Ghoul Ecology, though that was bugged. But honestly, not that many at all. That's really changed in Fallout 4. Fallout 4 is way more set up for you to build an offensive character than anything else. In fact, you can build up some ridiculously powerful characters. I'm going to give you an example now, just to kind of demonstrate what I'm talking about here. So let's say, for the sake of argument, you've decided that you want to make a James Bond type character and that your character is going to specialise in pistols. Obviously, you take all 5 ranks of the Gunslinger perk, which is on Agility 1, the perk that actually gives you bonus damage to pistols. That gives you double damage. If you take all 3 ranks of Lady Killer, or its equivalent, you get an extra 15% damage. Take all 3 ranks of Lone Wanderer, that's a further 25% damage buff. Take Nerd Rage up on Intelligence 10. Nerd Rage has had a major buff, by the way, versus how it used to be back in the days of Fallout 3. That just used to give you a massive damage resistance increase, and then top your strength up to 10, which was pretty useless. Now it doesn't, it gives you a straight up damage increase across all weapons, which is way better. So Nerd Rage, take all 3 perks in that, and you'll do an extra 40% damage whenever you are actually under 20% health. So actually, if you really want to maximize your damage output, you'd play the entire game at under 20% health. There's a really interesting playthrough to be done on that. I may well look at at some point, because that's really quite interesting. Take all 3 ranks of Ninja, so your sneak attack criticals do 3.5 times damage rather than the traditional 2. Take Bloody Mess, 3 ranks of that will get you a further 15% damage. Take Mr. Sandman, all 3 ranks of that, because that doesn't just let you kind of kill characters in bed anymore, that now also basically gives big damage increases to silence weapons. So put a silencer on the front of your gun, obviously you will, you're flipping James Bond. That'll get you a further 50% damage increase. Add all that together, and if you can score a sneak attack critical with your pistol, you're doing about 24x damage what its base damage is. But that's not even the best bit. If you really want to maximise damage, you're going to be looking into the melee characters, actually. So if you do the same thing with, say, you just take your trusty old baseball bat and you've decided you're going to go down a melee route, do the same thing, take all 5 perks of Big Leads, take Lady Killer, take Lone Wanderer, take Nerd Rage, take Ninja, take Bloody Mess. Obviously, a baseball bat, even though it is silent, doesn't count as a silenced weapon, so you can't take Salmon anymore, but take Rooted, and that gets you a 50% damage, assuming you're standing still. However, Ninja, though it gives a 3.5x damage increase to ranged weapons, gives you a 10x damage increase to melee weapons. Yeah, it's kind of much more like it was in Skyrim, actually. It's kind of like the, Ninja kind of works like some of the advanced sneak perks in Skyrim, which I'm fine with. It kind of works how daggers used to. Add all of that together, and a melee weapon can do 70 times its base damage if you specialise. So I think hopefully that kind of gives you an idea for, though you can very comfortably play this game as a generalist, if you want to be getting up to ridiculously powerful kind of damage combos, you're going to be wanting to specialise. So I've planned out a couple of different builds where I'm going to kind of tell you what I think a good starting special layer would be, but on top of that, what actually some good perks to take early on would be. So as we were just talking a second ago about the sniper class that can now do, if you specialise properly in it, 24x times base damage, then let's talk about a theoretical sniper build. This one I've adjusted slightly since I did my first video on character builds based on kind of some speculation we did at the time, but not a huge amount. So what I'm going to say for a sniper build is strength 3. A lot of people called me out when I originally said that snipers needed low strength, saying that we were going to need strength 7. We don't. The steady aim perk on strength 7 is basically for hip firing. If you're a sniper, then the whole point is you're not going to be hip firing, you're always going to be aiming down the iron sight, so you don't need the strength 7 perk. A sniper in Fallout 4 can get away with very low strength. We'll take a bit of strength though, you know, just so you've got some carry capacity, and so you have access to the strength 3 armor crafting perk, Armorer, so you can make your own armor, which is nice. Perception, put that at 8, you are going to want the sniper perk. We now know what the first rank of the sniper perk does. Basically what it means is you can aim down your scope and have a still gun so you can aim accurately for a longer period of time. Obviously very useful for a sniper. Not actually a damage increase though, interestingly, it's just kind of for accuracy and aiming, but if you're going to be a sniper, that's pretty damn crucial. Endurance 3 is absolutely fine. I'll just give you access to Life Giver. I don't think you're going to need much more than that. The whole point is you're keeping your distance. You shouldn't be under attack most of the time. Charisma 3 as well. You're not going to need much there, but it would be nice to have access to Lone Wanderer. As a sniper, you're generally probably not going to be wanting to be traveling around with companions too much, because companions do have that unfortunate tendency for breaking cover, starting fights, and generally drawing attention to you. So if you want to be super sneaky, you're probably going to be on your own. So Lone Wanderer for some bonus damage down the road will probably be very useful. Intelligence, you just need 3. That's primarily to get a rank of gun nut pretty early. You're basically going to need to be building your own sniper rifle. I'll kind of go into crafting a little bit more detail in like my full playthrough. I don't want to get into that now, but basically the game's not going to be really nice enough to give you like loads of sniper rifles. You're going to have to take weapons and you're going to have to build your own sniper rifles out of them. If you want to do that, you're going to need gun nut and potentially multiple ranks of it. Eventually, like before you're level 20, you're probably going to be wanting to boost that intelligence up to 5, so you can take Scrapper. Scrapper, which is on intelligence 5, basically means when you strip down stuff you get more components out of it, which is incredibly useful for building new weapons. So therefore you're probably going to be wanting to take that later, but for the moment just take intelligence 3 and you'll be wanting to take the first rank of gun nut pretty early. Now agility, this is the big one, and honestly I think that agility is now one of the most powerful special stats there is. I think kind of like when we start playing this game really seriously on the highest levels, characters, you're generally going to see characters starting off with high intelligence and high agility, and I'll go into a bit why over the course of this video. Agility for a sniper, however, is particularly important for the Agility 7 perk itself, Ninja, which I would say pretty much, if you're planning a sniper build, is going to be possibly the very first perk in the entire game you take. Just take the first rank of Ninja. That basically gets your sneak attack criticals up from doing double damage to 2.5 damage, so a very healthy increase there. And interestingly, Ninja's subsequent ranks unlock pretty damn early, so Ninja's second rank, where it gets up to a sneak attack critical doing 3x the original damage, unlocks at level 16, which to me feels really damn low. If you want a weapon to double its damage by taking like the weapon specific perks like Rifleman or whatever, you have to wait until like level 46 typically. It's normally about that the kind of the 5th level of weapon upgrades unlocks. But if you take Ninja, by level 33 you can get your sneak attack criticals from doing double damage up to 3.5 damage. So to me, that feels like a much easier way of massively increasing your damage output at a lower level while spending fewer perks to do it. So I think generally a lot of character builds are going to want to be taking Ninja. So Ninja's hugely important. I should also specify, this is something I didn't realise when I made my last video, but I've learned since, of course. Sneak attack criticals and critical hits used to basically be wrapped up in Fallout 3. They've now been formally separated. So critical hits are now something that you manually activate during VAT shots, whereas sneak attack criticals are obviously the same as they ever were, shots that you get on an unaware enemy. Those two things are now separated, so you cannot take the better criticals perk in order to improve your sneak attack criticals. Sneak attack criticals are basically a function of Ninja and the agility tree in general, whereas critical hits, as are performed in VAT, have moved entirely into the luck tree. So those two have been completely separated, which is kind of good. I think that's kind of worth doing. It was always a bit odd that they were tied together, so I think that is a good thing that they've been separated. And as a bonus, the fact that you've got that much agility means that also, obviously, you've got access to sneak right away, which is very useful, because as a sniper, you're probably going to want to be playing a pretty damn sneaky character. Obviously, that only leaves 1 point left over for luck, but now that we know that better criticals is basically something you're never going to be doing as a sniper, because generally sniper characters, you're not going to want to be using VATs, you're going to be wanting to be using VATs as little as possible. VATs will still be available, of course, but getting a critical hit faster doesn't really matter, because you're really going to be wanting to be hanging back and getting those sneak attack criticals, not the new Fallout 4 style critical hits anyway, so that can just be one. Now, once you've built that character, obviously you're going to want to increase its damage output as early as possible. So what I would say, like, for strong consideration for your first 5 perks would be Rifleman rank 1 for 20% more damage with kind of rifles, the sort of thing you're going to be using. Ninja for 2.5x damage on sneak attack criticals. The sniper perks you can actually aim accurately. Bloody Mess for 5% damage increase, and Lady Killer, or its equivalent if you're playing as a female character, for a further 5% damage increase. If you take the 4 perks Rifleman, Ninja, Bloody Mess and Lady Killer as your first 4 perks in the game, then by the time that you're level 5, then every time you score a sneak attack critical, that'll already be doing 3.3x base damage, which is a pretty damn powerful sneak attack critical, and kind of well worth considering, I'd say. After that point, you're going to be wanting to look to start gun crafting as early as possible. So you're going to want to take Gun Nut. You'll probably want to take Scrapper as well, like I was saying. You're going to want to be boosting your intelligence up to 5 pretty early on. You're going to be wanting to build your own silent sniper rifle as early as possible, because the moment you start building your own silent sniper rifle, then you can take Mr. Sandman. Obviously, Mr. Sandman lives in the agility perk tree as well, so you'll have access to that immediately. In fact, once you've got your first silent sniper rifle, which you should be able to get, you know, level 10 or below, you're already looking at like 4x damage on your sneak attack criticals from a very, very low level. At that point, the second rank of Sniper unlocks pretty damn early on. Rank 2 of Sniper unlocks at level 13. That adds Knockdown, as you might be familiar with from Fallout 3, the Victory Rifle, the one that you got from the Sniper's Shack on the kind of the northwest of the map. That used to have Knockdown on it. That's now been added to basically any scoped weapon that you'd be aiming with as a sniper. So you basically got a Knockdown effect added to all your weapons, which is really powerful for level 13. And then at level 16, the next rank of Ninja unlocks, so you can get 3x damage on your sneak attack criticals. Add that in, and also work into the assumption that you'll have taken the next rank of Rifleman by this point, and by about level 15ish, you'll be looking at characters that are doing over 5x base damage on their sneak attack criticals. So you're already getting to a pretty damn powerful sniper at that point, especially as you probably will have taken the second rank of Gun Nut, and thus you'll be able to start crafting some very powerful weapons. So I'd say that's probably one of the most powerful builds in the game. I'm aware technically, as I was saying before, melee characters can actually output higher damage if everything lines up perfectly for them. But I would say, as in New Vegas, snipers have kind of maintained their crown. I'd say they're still one of the most powerful classes to play as. Now let's move on to a different build I didn't discuss in my last video that I am thrilled to see is back. Ladies and gentlemen, the low intelligence build is back. And not only is it back, it's not even a gimmick anymore. It's actually not only quite feasible, but I'd say it's actually probably one of the most, if not the most powerful, then definitely one of the most interesting and fun playthroughs to play as in the low intelligence run, because the low intelligence run is now strongly tied to a high luck run. So a low intelligence, high luck character is now, it's genuinely fascinating. I haven't had much time to play with this yet because I haven't had, I haven't had enough time with Fallout 4 to play all the different play styles with. But low intelligence, high luck is one of the most interesting sounding characters that I've actually kind of managed to put together so far. Let me just lay it out for you very, very quickly. So I'm going to recommend that you go for Strength 5 because this is a character that syncs really nicely with a melee build, and I'll kind of cover that in a second. Perception 3, just to have access to awareness. Endurance 3, just so you have access to life giver and a couple of other important perks. Charisma 1, nothing you really need in there. Intelligence 1 deliberately, and we'll come to that in a moment. Agility 6 and luck 9. Now, this probably looks like a very weird build. Now, this has entirely come about because we now understand what the Luck 5 perk is, the kind of the slightly odd Garfield-ish looking perk image over on Luck 5. And it is Idiot Savant. And please don't take a drink every time you see someone mispronounce that, because you will die from liver failure. I get a feeling a lot of people are going to be mispronouncing that. I've probably just slightly mispronounced it, but I'm pretty certain it is indeed Idiot Savant. Now what this perk means is, at random, you will gain 3 times the usual amount of experience for performing an action, and it is more likely to happen if your intelligence is 1. Now I've kind of touched on before, and I'll discuss later in this video, that there is an argument for saying intelligence always ought to be pretty high, because the benefits in a situation where there's no level cap will always outweigh the immediate disadvantage you put yourself at. But let's leave that aside for now and simply say, even if that is the case, thanks to Idiot Savant, it doesn't matter if you put intelligence at 1, because you can make up the XP shortfall by getting 3x experience at random using luck 5. So that means you can keep yourself kind of leveling up at a decent rate. But how does a high luck build work? Basically, it means you're going to be constantly using VATs and constantly scoring critical hits. This is why the secondary stat I kind of suggested there is agility. At agility 6, you're still going to be needing plenty of action points, so you can be kind of doing those hits in VATs, because you need to be, for a high luck run, you need to be constantly hitting in VATs, because you need to be constantly activating those critical hits, and critical hits can only be activated if you're in VATs, and you can only be hitting in VATs if you've got enough action points to justify it. So you're going to need a fair amount of action points, and you're going to need perks like Action Boy on agility 5 down the line to get your action points regenerating faster. Basically, all of the luck perks, together with a couple of the agility perks, sync together really, really nicely. They feed into each other beautifully. It's a really elegant system. So basically, we now know what Luck 9 is, and would you believe it was not called Luck of the Irish. Like I flipping said it wasn't going to be called Luck of the Irish all along. Luck 9 is in fact called 4-leaf clover. And basically what that means is whenever you hit something in VATs, there is a chance that your critical meter will just automatically fill up. I should actually very quickly explain for people who may not have seen this right now. The way critical hits work in Fallout 4 is basically, if you go into VATs and you hit something, then a little critical meter fills up slowly. If you've got high luck, it fills up quicker. If you've got low luck, it fills up more slowly. Once it's filled up, then at any point while you're actually performing a VATs attack, you can turn that attack into a critical, and that empties the bar again. 4-leaf clover basically means that there is a chance that bar will just spontaneously fill up, meaning you can get the chance to do a critical hit immediately, and you can perform critical hits, i.e. for double damage, a lot more often. Though if you take better criticals, one of which will be available to you immediately, and the second rank of which comes available pretty early at level 17, you'll be able to be doing a lot more damage. So a normal critical hit does double damage. With 2 ranks of better criticals, you double that again, so you're basically doing 4 times damage with your hits. So I think you can already start to see how this is pretty damn powerful. Taking ranks of 4-leaf clover as well as high luck means your critical meter will be filling up very rapidly, and when it does, you can do 4x damage to anyone in VATs. Now let's talk about another perk that we didn't understand until very recently, the Luck 7 perk, Critical Banker, which a lot of people made a lot of guesses for what the hell that was going to mean, and I was miles off with my own guesses in the previous video as well. But Luck 7 Critical Banker basically means a normal character, they fill up the bar, and then that bar just stays filled up until you use it, at which point it's emptied again. Critical Banker basically means that you can fill up one bar, store that on one side, and then start filling up another bar. And as you spend more in Critical Banker, and again, its second rank unlocks pretty damn early at level 17, then you can basically have 3 critical hits stored up at any one time. And thanks to 4-leaf clover, which again, its second rank unlocks at level 13, which is really low for the fact it's a pretty damn powerful ability, then you could basically very quickly, after just, go out into the field, find some radroaches, find some bloatflies, and just hit them with a weak weapon. And there's a very good chance that you'll be able to fill up your critical meters really quickly. Do that, and you could walk up to, say, a boss character and just say, okay, I'm going to do 4 times damage to you, now I'm going to do 4 times damage to you again, now I'm going to do 4 times damage to you a 3rd time, and there's nothing you can do about that because I just did that 3 times in a row in VATs, and you can do all of that by the time you're level 17, a pretty damn low-leveled character in Fallout 4, because you level up relatively quickly in Fallout 4. That is extremely powerful. That is extremely powerful. As you get into the mid to late game, there's kind of more perks that help you out even more on kind of like the luck tree there. So Ricochet, which is luck 10, which basically means there is a chance, albeit a fairly small chance at first, that when a person fires at you, the bullet will ricochet off something and then immediately just go back and kill them. Once you've got that up to its top level, albeit you have to wait till level 50 to get all 3 ranks of that, there's a chance when a bullet does ricochet that it will automatically fill your critical meter immediately. Mysterious Stranger on Luck 4 does the same thing. If you max out his perk ranks, then when he kills someone in VAT, there's a pretty good chance that will also fill out a critical meter. So basically, you're just going to be wanting to fill out those critical meters as early as possible. You're also going to be wanting to take a couple of ranks of Grim Reaper's Sprint on Luck 8, because Grim Reaper's Sprint basically means if you kill someone in VATS, then there's a pretty good chance that that will restore your action points. Restore your action points, and you can keep hitting people in VATS, which will give you more opportunities for your critical meter to be filled up, which will mean you can do more critical hits. Do more critical hits, you kill more people. That will give you more action points through Grim Reaper's Sprint, meaning you can do more VATS hits, and those more VATS hits will mean, I think you can see how it goes. A perfect fight for a luck character basically involves walking into a really tough fight with 4 maxed out critical hits ready to go. You smash a couple of people in the face with those critical hits. Grim Reaper's Sprint activates and fills up your action points again. You go back into VATS immediately the moment your VATS attacks ends, and you do the same thing over using your new critical hit that just got unlocked because the mysterious stranger probably popped up, or someone fired at you and the bullet ricocheted and that filled up your critical meter too. You fire more critical hits at these people, and all of these critical hits mean you're doing like 4-5 times damage what your base damage ought to be every time you fire them. That fills up, and you can just see it's just a really virtuous circle. This is a really fun playstyle. I haven't dug into it yet, but it sounds hilariously good fun. So a low intelligence, high luck run is absolutely fantastically brilliant sounding right now, and I thoroughly recommend it if you want to do a bit of a kind of a novelty run. It'll probably be the second run I do properly because it sounds just great fun. Now let's quickly touch upon the melee character. I've adjusted this one slightly from a previous build I put together and I've talked about in the past before. So just very, very quickly, Strength 9, obviously, you do want Rooted, which is the Strength 9 perk. That's actually one of the most powerful perks in the entire perk tree to my mind. As I kind of predicted, it's pretty much a variant of the old Fallout 3 Superior Defender perk. Superior Defender back in Fallout 3 was so powerful it was almost broken. So Rooted, they've improved it slightly because they've now said that the damage bonus you get is only for weapons. But basically, while you're standing still, at its first rank you get 25% damage resistance and 25% damage increase with any melee weapon, which is pretty damn powerful because it means you can really stand your ground with a melee weapon very effectively. Perception 1, don't really need that. Endurance 3, Life Giver perhaps, but you don't really need that. Charisma 1, don't need that, don't worry about it. Intelligence, just get 2 for medicine. Agility 9. I've kind of tweaked this build now to give you more agility. And I think you've seen every single build I've put forward so far has at least kind of agility 6 or higher, because agility is so damn useful. Every character gets something useful out of agility. It's really true. Agility, I think, is kind of now one of the most essential stats, which, you know, it always used to be. Agility used to be really important. Say, in Fallout Tactics, agility was like the stat you needed. So it's nice to see agility back being a really, really crucial stat. Now, the main reason you want this is Blitz, because a melee character's got to do 2 things. In the early game, a melee character just has to kind of sprint up to something and then smash them in the face really hard. So obviously a high agility means you've got lots of action points, so you can sprint in very effectively. And Blitz, which is again is one of those perks you should take right at the beginning, means like you know, kind of like how in Fallout 3 you used to go into VATS, but if you're holding a melee weapon, if you weren't standing right next to something, then it would mean that you wouldn't actually be able to hit them. Your chance to hit would be 0%. Basically, Blitz means that the radius that you can be away from someone, but you still get a hit with VATS, has gone up significantly. So kind of you basically charge forward or teleport forward during the actual VATS hit, so you're able to activate the VATS earlier, which is very, very powerful, especially on its second rank, which is available at level 29, which basically means if you activate a Blitz VATS attack, i.e. a melee attack in VATS, but you're standing far away from someone right at the edge of the Blitz range, then it means that actually gives you bonus damage. I haven't been able to figure out what the calculation for that is yet. I haven't had enough time to play with it, but it is pretty damn powerful. Obviously, we already talked about Ninja, which is available on Agility 7 as well. So ultimately, you know, a melee character starts off just being like a crazy bloke with a hammer charging into combat, but ultimately will want to turn into an assassin, which is why you really want to double down on the agility route. You're going to want to max out the sneak perks in Agility 3 as early as possible, so you can become like, you know, a bit of a fabled shadow warrior assassin sort. Then take Ninja as early as possible, because as soon as you've maxed out the Ninja at level 33 is when the third and final rank of Ninja becomes available. Then at that point, any sneak attack critical done by a melee weapon will do 10x damage. Plus, of course, you've got the fact that if you did take Rooted, and you should have taken Rooted, if you're doing a melee run, then why the hell didn't you take Rooted? You'll get a further 50% on top of that, because you'll be standing still when you do the sneak attack critical. Yeah, that's how you start getting up to times 70 base damage attacks. That's what these melee characters are all about. It's basically just a high strength, high agility character. And of course, the final stat in that melee character is Luck 3. Ultimately, you'll want to be getting that up to 8, but that's really more late game stuff. Like the kind of the low intelligence, high luck character, you're going to want to get Grim Reaper's Sprint, because ultimately you're going to be wanting to kill people in that in order to get your action points back. So arguably, really interestingly, I mean, the melee class I've just described to you is the more kind of safe, traditional melee route. It's a lot more predictable. Arguably, the low intelligence, high luck character might actually be a better melee character. That really needs a lot of testing yet. I can't really comment on that yet. It's a little bit too early for me to say. But in short, you're going to be wanting to take things like Rooted, Blitz, and Little Leagues pretty early on just to maximise your damage output, and then as you reach kind of the mid-game, you're going to be wanting to put a lot more into Sneak, into Ninja, into Moving Targets, into more kind of defensive things so that you can sneak around an awful lot more. Now let's talk about another new character that I didn't talk about in my previous video. Let's talk about the tank. If you basically want to be a massive defensive tanky character, that's a bit of an interesting challenge in Fallout 4. Because Fallout 4, you're much more kind of set up in terms of all the perks that are available for being a massive glass cannon. But let's say for the sake of argument, you do want to be a massive defensive tanky character. You can just about do it. The build that you're going to need is going to be Strength 9. Again, you're going to be wanting to take Rooted so that when you're standing still, you gain 25% damage resistance. Perception 4, you don't need that for anything just yet, but at some point, like before the mid-game, you're going to be wanting to boost that up using perception training towards 7, so you can get Refractor. Refractor on Perception 7, by the way, for those of you who don't know, damage is calculated a fair bit differently in Fallout 4 than it used to be in Fallout 3 or Fallout New Vegas. Basically, now damage resistance and energy resistance are different things, so even if you've got ridiculously strong damage resistance for something like Rooted, someone can just show up with an energy weapon and shoot you, and that won't do you any good because you need to have energy resistance as a separate thing. The perk Refractor gives that to you, so that's kind of, even though it's, when I first looked at it, I thought that looked really, really kind of feeble. I think a lot of characters are ultimately going to have to take at least a few ranks of that, because otherwise, you know, when you're taking on anyone with energy weapons, you're going to be screwed no matter how good the armor you're wearing is. Though, of course, using armor on Strength 3, which you'll have access to because you're Strength 9 in this build, you'll be able to build your own armor as well, which is another advantage to this. Endurance 4. I know that's a bit of an odd thing to say for a tank character, but you can build that up later. That gives you access to Life Giver, which is kind of useful. And yeah, we can just boost that later. But interestingly, for the early game, there's not actually for a tanky character much you need in the endurance perk chart, which is kind of interesting. Charisma 3, you're going to be wanting to take Lone Wanderer immediately, because the first perk of that gives you plus 15 damage resistance, and that kind of increases a little bit with the subsequent perks as well. Intelligence 1, nothing much you need in here, but you may wish kind of down the line just to boost that to 2, just so you have access to Medic. Agility, again, it's 6. I don't think there's a single character in this game, a single playstyle that doesn't benefit from agility of at least 6, because seriously, there's some really good perks in the agility tree, trust me on this one. And that's basically to get you the perk Moving Target. Moving Target's a really fascinating one, because if you've got agility of 6 or above, and as I've kind of said a couple of times in this video, I don't see any playstyle where you wouldn't benefit from having agility of kind of at least 6. It's really damn essential. That means you're going to have plenty of action points, so you're going to be able to sprint around a lot. Moving Target, however, on agility 6 is one of kind of the more interesting new perks. Basically, it means at any point when you're sprinting, you gain 25 damage resistance and 25 points of energy resistance as well. It's actually one of the very few perks that gives you energy resistance other than Refractor itself. And I would say that it's much more likely that you'll have Moving Target available to you earlier, because Moving Target's in the much more powerful agility skill tree than arguably the slightly less useful, or at least less essential, Perception skill tree. Unless you're a sniper, I don't think there's much need to kind of have a high perception, at least in the early game, though you may wish to boost up to that with perception training later. And finally, of course, that just leaves a single point for luck. This isn't a build that really relies on luck. If you take your first 4 perks in the game, Rooted, Moving Target, Lone Wanderer, and the first rank of Toughness, which lives right at the top of the endurance tree, then whenever you're sprinting, and you'll be able to sprint for quite a long time, and I've had a chance to play with this, like with agility like 5 or 6, you can sprint for a good, I don't know what it is, it's probably like a good 15 seconds straight. So, you know, you can cover a pretty fair distance while sprinting. You'll have plus 50 points of damage resistance and 25 points of energy resistance. When you're standing still because of Rooted, you'll still have 50 damage resistance. And if you just happen to be walking somewhere for whatever reason, you'll still have 25 damage resistance. And that, of course, is before we apply any benefits from your armor. So that's some pretty damn impressive tanky stuff. Now, to my mind, that kind of build also syncs up really nicely with like a power armor build, because the main power armor perk lives on strength 10. That's pain train, and basically means that you can sprint while wearing power armor. If you charge into people while you're wearing your power armor, you knock them down and kind of do damage to them. Now obviously this build works really well for that as well, because again, you've got pretty high agility, so you can be sprinting more places. Sprinting in power armor, yeah, with kind of a really high strength, so you can take pain train, is really good fun. So that's arguably kind of a thing that's very worth doing. So this build works really nicely for like a power armor or a big guns kind of heavy gunner style of playthrough. If you'd rather use it for like a melee style tanky build, you can do that as well. Just boost agility 3 points for agility training kind of over your first 20 levels or so, up to 9, so you can get blitz. Then it looks very similar to a modified version of the melee build above, but you know, arguably just a little bit more sturdy. So if you're having a bit of trouble with the fact you're taking too much damage and you're being killed too often, consider maybe kind of taking some of those perks anyway. Now the other interesting thing about the tank character is the way it evolves, which is in the later game, it's not so much about just piling on more damage resistance and energy resistance, it's really about health regeneration, because the perks really high up the endurance perk tree all provided their highest ranks health regen. So if you take the third rank of solar powered, and again this is only available at very high levels, then during kind of the hours of sunlight you gain health regeneration. If you take all 3 ranks of ghoulish at endurance 8, then at its highest level, then while you're irradiated, you get health regeneration. And if you take all 4 ranks of life giver, again only available at very high levels, you gain health regeneration. Stack all of those 3 things together, and arguably you've actually got some pretty powerful health regen going on. One of the fun things that you could really do more in New Vegas than Fallout 3 was if you had multiple things that actually were giving you health regen kind of activated simultaneously, you could actually kind of, against like less dangerous to even like kind of mid-tier enemies, you can actually be healing off damage faster than they could dish it out to you, as long as you weren't like actively standing there encouraging them to hit you. I don't know whether we're going to be able to do that yet. I haven't got a character to a high enough level yet to kind of test that. I think it's kind of very interesting that actually kind of like the tanky characters go in their early game from kind of just piling on damage resistance and energy resistance to in the late game actually having not just kind of good resistances but also really good health regen, which makes them even more tanky because, you know, the damage that's coming in is being massively reduced and then they're healing off that damage automatically without actually needing to use stim packs. So I think that's a very interesting twist to a tanky character, and that's another playstyle I think I want to look at in more detail at some point. And finally, I just kind of want to kind of make some amends to like a generalist build where if you don't want to specialize, but you just want to enjoy the game, I kind of put a recommendation for that in my last video. I've changed my mind a little bit based on kind of some experiences I've had with the game. So basically the actual character that I decided to go with in my first playthrough of Fallout 4, and a character I'm pretty happy with so far, has basically been Strength 3. So, you know, you've got Armourer and you have melee crafting right there if you happen to need it kind of down the line. Perception 4, you've got Locksmith, you've got Awareness, you've got Rifleman. Endurance 3, you've got Life Giver, you've got Toughness. Charisma 4, you've got Attack Dog, you've got Lone Wanderer, you've got Lady Killer and its variants. Intelligence 6, and I'll talk a little bit more about intelligence in just a second, but you've got access to science and to gun nut, so you can do lots of weapon crafting. And weapon crafting I strongly would suggest you kind of do consider getting into, because it's very deep, very interesting, and can really help give you a very powerful edge early on, as well as access to Scrapper on Intelligence 5, which is very important, I think, if you want to get into crafting as well, because, you know, not being able to find the rare components is a huge problem when crafting. So Scrapper, which is a perk that lets you kind of get hold of rare components while scrapping things, very, very powerful indeed. Agility 5, maybe I should have made that even a little bit higher, but I'll probably boost that to 6 down the line. But yeah, again, I just cannot see a character class where you would do anything other than having agility at 5 at the absolute bare minimum. Agility is so good in this game. And then luck 3, just so I have access to bloody mess, and just so my criticals go up a little bit less slowly. I'd say that's a very good generalist build. That's what I'll be doing my very first playthrough that I've already put the first part of out on this channel. So I'd say that's a very, very good thing. And the only other character that I think that's kind of particularly of interest will probably just be the kind of the high charisma pacifist type character. That's completely unchanged from my last recommendations. I think my last recommendations for that character still hold true. So if you kind of want to see that, then go check out my kind of original version of the character build video, and there's details of that character in there. The only significant kind of upgrade to that is obviously now we know that the Charisma 2 perk, Lady Killer and its variant, basically if you take those you have a better chance of using Intimidation against a human character of the corresponding gender. So that's kind of worth knowing, but other than that I've not made any changes to that build. And finally, we need to touch on a topic I've spoken about before, which is the intelligence dilemma. Basically what this means is, in a game where there is no level cap, is there any reason when intelligence gives you bonus XP why you wouldn't always take intelligence at 9? Because if you take intelligence at 9, for doing the same amount of effort, you'll be at a higher level than a character that didn't take intelligence at 9. If, for example, you wanted your intelligence to actually be 6, but you took it at 9 instead, that means there were 3 special points that couldn't be assigned somewhere else. So that means you need to spend 3 levels boosting something else's special points to get you back to where you wanted to be in the first place. So you're 3 levels behind. But intelligence, because you're getting more XP, eventually you will be 3 levels ahead for doing the same amount of stuff as the other character. The moment you get 3 levels ahead, then you've caught up, and after that point you're basically making an experience profit, if you like. I've actually had a chance to run the calculations now, and I've tried to figure out how much bonus XP each rank of intelligence gives you. Now, my understanding, and this is just kind of from doing some quick experiments, I can't guarantee this yet, basically doing an activity gives you a base amount of XP, and then you get a bonus amount of XP based on the intelligence that you've got, meaning even if you have intelligence 1, you still get a tiny amount of bonus XP. This is going to drive people with OCD nuts, by the way, because it means pretty much any character build gets really random amounts of experience all the time. So yeah, a character with intelligence 1 walks into a new location and gets 21 experience points. A character with intelligence 10 walks into that same location and gets 26 experience points, neither of which are nice round numbers. Now, I'm pretty sure what this means is the base XP for discovering a new area is 20 XP. At level 1 intelligence, you get a 5% bonus to that, which is 21, which is what you get. At level 3, it's a 10% experience increase, so you'd get 22, which is exactly what happens. At level 5, 15% increase, it's 23, which is exactly what happens. Up to eventually level 10, it's a 30% XP increase, which will give you 26, which is exactly what happens. You basically get between 5 and 30% XP increase based on your intelligence. So in other words, the difference between intelligence 10 and intelligence 1 is a 25 percentage point variance, so between 5 and 30%. Now that's a pretty big swing, and arguably that does make a high intelligence worth it, but as kind of some people pointed out to me after I did this calculation last time, when you're playing the game for the first time, the problem with leveling up too fast is, while you'll get perks faster, it means because you'll have seen less of the game, you'll have less scrap, you'll have done less crafting, you'll have less combat experience in general, and that means because enemies are going to start scaling with you, you're potentially going to start going against tougher and tougher enemies when you don't have the best quality weapons. If you're leveling up slower, that means when you face tougher enemies, you'll already have a chance to have explored more areas, got more scrap, built better weapons, crafted much kind of better armor and equipment for yourself. So arguably, for your first playthrough of the game, I wouldn't go for a max intelligence strategy of intelligence 9, because I think it basically just means you'll run into tougher enemies a lot sooner. You're probably going to want a reasonable intelligence anyway, because yeah, for crafting, intelligence 4, 5 and 6 are all kind of pretty damn important, but don't just kind of rush for intelligence 9 unless you really want to, unless you're kind of like, for example, you're absolutely desperate to use nothing but power armor, because if you want to do nothing but power armor, then you want strength 10 and intelligence 9, because the intelligence 9 perk, nuclear physicist, basically lets the power source for your power armor work longer and better, so you're going to be wanting to take intelligence 9 just for that. But unless you're actively kind of wanting to kind of take the stuff that's really high up the intelligence skill tree really early on, I wouldn't bother. I strongly suspect once we start kind of really learning this game and playing it on hard difficulties, we'll probably see a lot of characters with high intelligence, because we'll be able to know how to deal with high level enemies that show up early, and we'll know how to craft the best weapons and where to find the right scrap to build good quality weapons early. For your first playthrough, I really wouldn't recommend it. I think you're probably, with a high intelligence, going to cause yourself more harm than good. So I'd just say go for a middling intelligence, and I wouldn't worry too much about the intelligence dilemma, though I strongly suspect ultimately when we start kind of proper power leveling characters and coming up with like optimized playthroughs of this game, it's going to be high intelligence, high agility characters that we see an awful lot of. So yes, there we are, ladies and gentlemen. That is just kind of my little kind of character build guide for Fallout 4. Obviously, Fallout 4 will be coming out on general release very, very soon, and I hope this kind of helps just inspire a few people for what sort of character they want to play as, and just explained a few perks and how a couple of systems works for you. I hope that's very useful for you, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm sure I'll create some more extra guides for Fallout 4 as we go along as well. So if you found this useful, please do feel free to hang around and subscribe. I will have some more stuff up for you very, very soon. But in the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, I've been John, it's been many a true nerd, and this has been my revised and final character build guide for Fallout 4. Thank you very much, and goodbye.